So get ready. Get ready to get those. Oh, I feel like Ellie.
Yeah.
Would you do us an honour here and start the clap for this next act? Will you do it?
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone's going to join in with you as we welcome to the stage Jay Sommer. Can you do that? Can you start the clap, Ellie?
Yeah.
Yes. And now everyone join in.
Well, good evening, King Charles. He's not just walked in, by the way, he's with Donald Trump in the USA, isn't he? Can we just give a round of applause for Billy, who's been a great MC so far tonight? And also, as some of you may know, I had the easy part tonight. I just booked some comedian pals to perform. All of the hard work in sorting this out, and he will vouch for this, I've done hardly anything, is Ross Cleaver over there on the doors. Let's give Ross a big round of applause. And I stitched them up. A big thank you to Richie and his friend Martin for sorting out sound and lighting as well. So let's give them a big round of applause. And it's really strange for me at my gigs to actually look out and actually see friends and family here tonight. But also we've got R&I volunteers, lifeboat crew, hard-working R&I employees, and R&I employees. And my vicar here tonight. So, if any of you have seen me before, you'll know that's very brave getting a vicar here to watch my act. But I think it's okay for him to come because quite often after I've performed, I hear people going, "Jesus Christ!" So I think we're on good ground. Now I recently got back from a little trip abroad to get a bit of sun. Not a proper holiday. I went with my wife and kids. And that is really brave of me when my wife and one of my kids are here. But it was a cheap holiday because it was in term time. And I did the right thing. I went to my kids' school and I told them what I was going to do. And I said, Mr. Soma, because they use my stage name for some reason. They said, that's okay, we will simply record it as an unauthorised absence. I said, fine. They said, yes, we will. So I've got that expense to come. But a friend said to me, Jay, are you not worried about the impact on the two kids' education? I said, 2 kids? More like 300, my wife's a teacher. Luckily they've not noticed that her mum's died twice abroad in the last 5 years. But it was a great holiday, King Charles, and let me tell you, I got laid a lot. Meant to cheer, yes. Actually, no, sorry, hold on. I said that wrong. I got lays a lot. They're the foreign Walker's crisps. You can probably tell from my shape. I am halfway to type 2 diabetes. I've got type 1. I think that's how it works. Now, I shouldn't have to point out, but I will, that having sex and a packet of lays are 2 very different things. Because sometimes a packet of lays can take me over 5 minutes. Although both activities can leave a slightly salty taste in the mouth. Say that with my daughter in the crowd, she must be so proud. But no, it's a great holiday. We stayed just outside Alicante in Spain, just outside the main city centre. And luckily for me, there was a curry house nearby. That's what I look for in Spain, a good curry house. But not just any curry house, so it did great, all the typical Indian food, but it also did Spanish food. So it did paella and oranges, Seville marmalade. But no, he also did Italian food as well. So he did pizza, pasta, garlic bread. Now that was great for me. I ordered a nice lamb curry. My wife and kids, they ordered garlic bread and pizza. But then out comes the complimentary poppadoms and chutneys, which is fine for me, but you don't want that, do you, with Italian food? I mean, it reminded me of the time when I took my mountain bikes to be fixed at Halfords and I got some complimentary windscreen wipers. I mean, that's a fair simile, I think. But also, what annoyed me was it hadn't thought about the name for the place whatsoever. So it called itself Dream Corner. I mean, it was on a corner, not that dreamlike. But I thought, what a wasted opportunity. If that was me doing a curry house with some Spanish food and continental food, I'd have gone for something different, like matador masala, siesta and samosa, or the one I'm really proud of, suntan dory. And when you fly back from Alicante, it goes via Stansted and you're stuck there for 2 hours, that's the kind of stupid puns that you can think up while you're there. But a great holiday. It might have been the first holiday that I ever went on with my wife many years ago now. And on that first holiday, also to a beautiful sunny beach resort, first day, sun shining, went down the beach, started to sunbathe. And my wife will kill me for this, but this is a true story. She turned to me and said, "Jay, can you walk down the beach and see if there's any women topless bathing?" Now, coincidentally, I was about to go and do that anyway. So to be able to do it with her blessing, I knew this is one worth keeping. But I know what you're thinking, okay, Jay, but were there any topless bathers that day? And sadly, on that occasion, there were none in Weston-super-Mare. Now, I mentioned, obviously, I've got 2 kids and I'm married, but my parents, they're travellers. By that, I don't mean that they've got a Romany or gypsy background. No, they're on the run. They are on the run because they got spooked by a letter threatening them with prosecution for not having a TV licence. So that's the kind of people that they are. Yeah. Now, my daughter, you won't be able to tell who she is in the crowd, but my daughter Ellie. That trophy cost me a lot of money, so I'm glad it's coming home. So that's why I'm reuse it next year. My daughter, she typed to me the other day and she said, "Dad, there's a careers evening at school, can you come along?" I said, "Well, I don't mind the south, but the north is a dodgy country." Like you, she didn't find that funny. She said, "No, Dad, it's about jobs." I said, "Okay, yeah." So I went along and we had a little presentation and then we got 5 minutes with the careers advisor. And she turned to my daughter and she said, "Tell me, Ellie, what occupation interests you?" And she said, "Palestine." Which we both thought was hilarious. Not so much so the careers advisor. There's just this blank, confused look on her face. It was like the wheel was spinning, but the hamster was well and truly dead, if you know what I mean. So my daughter felt sorry for her and said, "Okay, banking, West banking." Still nothing. Still nothing from her. No, she's, I don't want to give away her age because she's here, but she was also thinking ahead to the next year where she wants to learn to drive. So I've got that expense to come along with a fine for the holiday. And I said to her, "You know what, Ellie, in my driving test, I only got 5 minors." She said, "That's really good, Dad." I said, "Well, their parents didn't think so." Unluckily for them, the lollipop lady was in hospital that day. I'd hit her the day before, accidentally. Now, I mentioned my kids. I've got a son, and my son is home alone. Not got any babysitters tonight. Now, so we had to stop using our last babysitters. Well, they didn't like being called that. They preferred the term social services. That's right. But when he started school about 18 months ago now, I asked him what he was studying, and he said to me, "Jim Davidson." I said, "Jim Davidson, the right-wing comedian? That seems a very strange subject to study. What have you covered?" He said, "Generational challenges." I said, "No, you mean the Generation Game? It was just a game show on BBC One. What else?" He said, "Problems in the Middle East." I said, "No, Jim was just entertaining the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan." I said, "Anything else?" He said, "The Torah." I said, "No, he was known as the Tory, the only comedian daft enough to admit that he voted Conservative." But then I had a think and thought to myself, did he say Jim Davidson or did he say Judaism? It turned out to be the latter, which is a bit of a relief. Now, I went back to the Midlands recently. In fact, I didn't grow up on the South Coast. I came down in 1994. By that, I don't mean I was high for the whole of 1993, by the way, for a detective on the front row. No. The Midlands town I grew up in was a town called Rugby near Coventry, and it was incredibly tame. The only thing smoked there was the bacon, and that was special occasions. But when I was young, free and single, I used to go out on the town and I'd say to the ladies, oh, I come from rugby. And they'd laugh, misunderstand and say, I bet that made the scrums interesting. To which I said, well, it would depend how much I fancy the hooker. If it did, then sometimes I might come from rugby. Guess that makes me trisexual. But no, so I went back to the Midlands recently, and I caught up with my brother. I had not seen him in quite some time. And I thought he was busy in the Midlands studying for his law exams, because last time I spoke to him, he told me he was a trainee barrister. But no, he turned out he was an apprentice at Cafe Nero. He said to me, I'd like to introduce you to my new girlfriend. He said, she's a trans lady. I said, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I myself now identify as non-binary, unless I live to 100. That's one for those of you who understand binary. He said, no, you misunderstand me. She's from Transylvania. Now, I knew that was in Eastern Europe somewhere, but I had to look it up to see where it was. It's actually in Romania. Anyway, I said, well, how did you meet? He said, oh, well, Jay, it was very romantic. He said, our eyes met across a crowded platform. I said, oh, a train station. He said, no, scaffolding. But it was at that moment, when our eyes met that I knew she had captured mine. I said, heart. He said, no, phone and wallet. She was a Romanian pickpocket. I said that joke recently, and there was a Transylvanian woman in the audience. And she said, it was a good joke. I don't like the Transylvanians. That's why I'm in Southampton. So there we got her blessing. So I'm sticking with it. But no, I said to him, I said, what are you doing now? And he said, pet grooming. I said, that is disgusting. He said, no, I'm just very attracted to young cats and dogs. So I've taken no chances. I've got a restraining order. He can't go within 100 metres of my pet dog, Basil. He's a Cavapuchon. We got him a couple of years ago, and we didn't know what we were doing with him in the slightest. So we took him to some pet training classes. And at the first one, the lady turned to us and said, in a very serious voice, listen carefully, dogs in Bournemouth have been going into bushes in parks and eating human feces, and it's making them really ill. Oh gosh, I was shocked to hear that, and great, I thought, I can't even shit in my own back garden now. But it's a fun little thing. He likes to play with the hose in the garden. Lucky him, when I want to do that, they charge me for it. He gets quite humpy when he's watched his favourite TV show. That's a cartoon that's called Paw Patrol. For those of you that haven't seen Paw Patrol, if you picture a canine version of the Village People, that's a good summary of what goes on there. But we were worried about Basil's digestion. So you end up sending text messages to your partner to do with your pets. You'd only ever send it in the context of being a pet owner. So we were worried about his digestion. But I took Basil for a walk one morning, and I ended up texting my wife, and I put a nice walk with Basil in the cold this morning. Done 2 big poos. Basil not done any. Thank God for the bushes. Yeah. Now I mentioned I went back to the Midlands to see my brother. I've overrun on my own child, booked it, so who cares? Should have given myself longer, shouldn't I? I went back up with my mum phoned me after I came back from the Midlands, and she phoned me on one of her many burner phones. She's taken being on the run very seriously. She said, Jay, because she calls me by my stage name as well. She said, Jay, when you're back in the Midlands, did you pick up the post like I asked you to? And is there any important letters? And I had gone and picked up the post for her, and it did include one letter. And I knew what was in that letter, because having written a really cleverly worded letter pretending to be about TV licensing, I thought I'd write another one. I said, yes, Mum, there is one. It's from the library. So what does it say? It says, that book you took out on called TV Licensing and Me. It's 1 year overdue. She said, fine. I said, yes, I will. And it's pretty significant. And they're threatening you with prosecution and jail. So she's staying on the run, and I can carry on renting out her house and coining the money in. So that's great. Now, you've been a fantastic crowd all evening. A big thank you for coming out and supporting the Iron and I. We've got another interval coming up, which Billy will tell you about. And then we've got one more act tonight. So keep it going. You've been brilliant, and donate some money to the Iron. Thank you.